when we study biocentrism, biology, biography, bio. So centering on the bio. When I ask you for your bios, you know what I'm looking for. Deep ecology and the relational approaches. These are important. Can I have one of you quickly read? That's what I do. I hope that people read the references. At least you looked at it. Don't disappoint me. Okay, maybe on the screen now. So keep your hand up if you want to read. The key question is, look on your screen, please. Is nature morally considerable for its own sake? Remember, Kant. Is the human being valuable for her own sake, or only insofar as humans have appreciation or need for it? So think of that, but this time put nature. Nature referring to the physical environment and all that is within it. Think of it that way. Is it morally considerable? Is it something that has its own worth, dignified, if you like? We value it for its own sake, or it is only valuable insofar as it meets ends for people. Okay, the river, the fishes in the sea, everything that you call natural, the trees. Are trees important only because of what it does or they do for humans? The day the last tree dies, the last man dies. Is that the reason why we must keep the trees intact? Only because human survival is fixed on the survival of nature, for example? Or even if there wasn't any human being left on earth, the trees and the river bodies and whatever, their moral worth, they are morally considerable, regardless of the benefit they give us. Okay, that question is ethical in nature. It is key to environmental ethics. The last man example. So I asked that question. I said, imagine that some catastrophe has killed every other human being on earth and it's left with the last person. See, if this person were dying and he had the capacity, there is a technology that could let him destroy every other thing. Would there be anything morally wrong about doing so? The moral, okay? Would it be wrong to do so? After all, nothing else will depend on the trees and the rivers and the fish. Nothing here referring to no other human being will be left because he's dying. That is a question bordering on the moral worth of nature outside of the benefits it gives to the human person. Do you place, like the question I asked you, the worth of trees, rivers, the natural environment? Do you connect it to how much it affects the human being? Anthropo, remember, centrism is the value of nature centered on the human being. We are getting there. Consider this anecdote from from who Thomas Hill. A wealthy eccentric bought a house in a neighborhood. The house was surrounded by a beautiful display of grass, plants, and flowers, and it was shaded by a huge old avocado tree. But the grass required cutting. Take note, the flowers needed tending, and the man wanted more sun. So he cut the whole lot down and covered the yard with asphalt. That's what we are doing in the name of modernity. I looked at the spread of the topics. I felt that there were too many, so some of them I've taken out. You can't learn everything in one course, but read around some of the references given, and you will see. Oh, you will see. What's the thing? Children, I'm online. Oh. I'm sorry, people. The little ones are back. You will see environment and modernity. You see interrogating the so-called modern lifestyle that we have, where all our we like the pavements, we like the skyscrapers. Even recently, I heard news about the Chimota Forest in Ghana here, which is one of the forest reserves. I heard news. I didn't follow that news very well, so I don't want to speak authoritatively on it. But if I heard right, it was going to be giving away to be developed into possibly something that is quote and unquote we call modern. The point is, this man on your screen cuts the whole lot, the tree, the flowers, everything, cuts everything down, covers the yard with asphalt. After all, it was his property and he was not fond of plants. Is that morally acceptable? It will depend on which environmental ethics or which theory you are referencing. Eh? And so on your screen now, I have one of you read anthropocentrism as one of the ethical theories on environment. Thank you. Mr. Bell, go ahead.
Doc, please can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, anthropocentrism.
Mm-hmm.
The view that humans are the only primary subject of moral value and moral obligation.
Good. Please continue.
The assumption that human beings and or their interests matter morally in their own right, while everything else matters morally only insofar as it affects human beings and or their interests.
Very good. And we are quoting that from McShane, 2009. Okay. What is she saying or he saying? The author just wants to put across a simple fact. If you are an anthropocentric environmental ethicist, then you will say that all the environment, natural environment that is useful insofar as Nkosi said it benefits, morally speaking, it benefits the human person. We check the relevance only in relation to what human beings. So the examples I've given earlier is straightforward. That's anthropocentrism. Okay. The anthropocentric worldview then adopts a human-centered what ideology. Look on your screen. Very straightforward. To assert dominance over all other species. Eat the fish, go into the forest and kill. So far as what you are going to get benefits you, that is what matters. Views humans as what? Unique and superior. Views nature in economic terms. Because human beings are the ones interested in economy. So if Galamsey give me dollar, I'm thinking that way for Ghana, it's relevant. Then the river bodies and what have you. And looking at the use of the water for human well-being. So the other person who is advocating for don't galamsey in our river waters may still be looking at it from another anthropocentric view because it will be how the human beings will benefit from the river, not the sake of the river itself. Okay, so these are all ways of thinking of the anthropocentric view. You will see then that immediately the anthropocentric view suggests what? An instrumental value of what? The environment. Now you can connect the key point we saw in the introduction. It introduces the value of environment only relative to how much it benefits the human being. So you see why anthropocentrism, simply meaning what? Centering or focusing more on how the environment benefits the human person. That is how you morally consider the environment. Don't think that it has its own value for its sake. Its value is always relative to how it benefits society. The human person. So that's the anthropocentric view. Why would you consider the anthropocentric view an instrumental view of what? The environment? Or why would you say the anthropocentric environmental ethicist thinks of the environment in instrumental terms? It means that you think of the environment as the way that sister thought about the baby in her tummy. She's going to use the baby to force the brother to marry him. So the baby is valuable only because of what she will bring, and not that she is valuable to her as a being with her while. Okay. So according to anthropocentric views on your screen now, nature has value instrumentally. Now understand that. The environment is a means to human ends. Isabel, please read what you see now.
The word objects have in their own right independent of their value to any other end. The value that a thing has in its own right and for its own sake, sometimes referred to as inherent value, that is, value contained within the entity that possesses it, not value bestowed from outside.
Excellent. So that is now contrasting this way of thinking of a value, the worth of something. What you see there is intrinsic or inherent value. This is distinct from what? Instrumental value. And I try to do that even with the introductory slide, using a little bit of Kant to remind you, if you did moral philosophy, that you cannot think of the human person as a means to an end. You can't treat a human being as a means to attain a certain end. He says, don't do that. The human being should be treated as an end in herself, an end. Why? Because human beings have intrinsic or inherent worth, value. If you got that, then you can now contrast intrinsic worth with what? Instrumental value. They are key terms that will help you see what is going on with the debate. So the moral standing or moral considerability discussion, what is it about? We are, sister, read it. Maybe some people didn't look at the slide, so I don't assume. So please read this. Thank you, Krista.
Moral standing and moral considerability are often tied to intrinsic value. They are synonymous terms that refer to an entity's moral status. Thus, an entity is morally considerable or has moral standing if and only if it counts from a moral perspective. That is, if it can be morally harmed or disrespected, or if it is sort of thing to which we can have duties or obligations.
Very good. So do we have a duty or an obligation towards the river? Let's find some river, like River Tano or River Densu. This question, whether we have a moral obligation or a duty. Remember Kant, this is more of Kant's language. A duty, we owe it as a duty to respect and dignify and value River Densu. Let's use that. That rock, this fine groove that we call Nananumumpo, the reserve, forest reserve. Is it a moral obligation that we owe to that tree or that forest reserve? Or we are only reserving it because of what it will bring us. We need green so that the ozone layer will not be this ultimately so that the human being. If we argue and argue, does the tree or the forest reserve or those distinct species of forest animals that we are reserving, is it as a matter of a certain moral status that this natural environment has? That is why we respect it and we don't want to hurt it and we don't want to devalue or harm it. Is it because of its status? If it is so, then we are giving it an intrinsic worth. We are recognizing its intrinsic value. We are not even giving it, we are recognizing what it is, its dignity, its value. Take note. That is why we will give it a moral standing, or we'll give them a moral standing. So some don't eat, some are vegetarians, for example, because they don't think that you should harm an animal, for instance. That's an extreme one, okay, because of its moral standing. Just like someone wouldn't want to eat a human being, a fellow human being. You say, hey, this is a human being I'm treating like that. Why? Because of the supposed intrinsic worth of human beingness. Okay, so you can't tie the human being, or if a car knocks down someone, God forbid, then the other cars will be passing over the dead body, going and coming like that. If it were a chicken, maybe we can do that for a while and then it will flatten up and dry up on the street. But if it's a human being, even in death, you see, you can't treat the human being this way, shamefully like this. No. Or you nipa. This is a human being. Because we think of a human being as having a certain moral status. Now, the question we are asking now, do we give such moral considerability or moral standing to animals, to trees, to the natural environment? That is the question. Very good, Christabel. Thank you. Now I want someone else to read for me. Kindly put up your hand quickly, quickly. This is not a very heavy, it's not a difficult content. It's just plenty. The environmental ethics. They are accessible to us, so we should just work. Someone to read for us quickly. Quick. Please raise your hand so I'll know you want to read and I can call you. I like it when we read because some may not have looked at it, you see. So if you assume that they have and you just touch on the content, then people may be found wanting. We don't want that. Stephanie, thank you, Nana Kofi. Stephanie, go ahead. Nana Kofi, send me a snapshot of yourself. Excuse me, of yourself on WhatsApp after class. I know that 1,000
Yes, please.
people send a message and say they are all Nana Kofi. Even sisters will send.
Yes, please.
Go ahead, my dear.
Non-anthropocentrism
Yes.
of the only primary subjects of moral value and moral education.
Oh, Stephanie,
It
dear, you are
claims
willing
that
to read from you by your
the
background.
natural world.
Wait a minute. Stephanie, I think your background is not too helpful. Oh. Even though the will is there. Can I try Gracious and come back to you, please? Okay. Gracious, read for us. Because of the recording, so that you can benefit when we have to play it back.
Non-anthropocentrism.
Thank you.
The view that humans are not the only primary subjects of moral value and moral obligation. To claims that the natural world and its parts have value in their own right, independently of their effects on human beings or interest. Theory suggests that nature has an intrinsic value in the same way or almost the same way as humans and must be treated as an end in themselves.
Very good.
Then anthropocentric ethics grants morals such natural objects as animals, plants, and landscapes.
Very good. So landscape, plant, animals. Some, like I was telling you, some won't even fish at a certain side of that, ocean. Those of you who have watched the cartoon called Moana, you will know. They will say this side is for our great grand something. In other words, they revere, they honor the place because of the way they think of the place, not because they will benefit or something. Okay, so that is a non-anthropocentric view. I'm sure you get that easily. So the nature of intrinsic value. How to discover intrinsic value in nature is the defining problem for environmental ethics, at least according to Caldecott. Okay, how to determine, to define it. What? Defining the value of nature has become the problem. How do we place value on nature? I said the Galamsey we are fighting. Is it because we don't want to lose our good drinking water? Then it's about us ultimately. The other person is saying, well, you want good drinking water. Me, I want food to eat. Me too, I'm hungry. I'll come and get the gold from here and go and sell it in South Africa and drink South Africa water, for example. So that person is still looking at his benefit versus your benefit because we are all interpreting nature in instrumental terms because our focus is on the human person. But if we can give a moral status to nature, whether trees, animals, landscape, river bodies, oceans, rocks, what have you, we give that natural object or thing a moral status, just like human beings. Then whether the human being is in Ghana or, Zaire, which country is A? Afghanistan or Zaire. It won't matter. The dignity of the human person, we all will agree. Maybe we practice it different. Sometimes we don't do what we know, but we will know that human beings, regardless of which color or place they find themselves, are are worthy of what dignity. Do we do same? Do we interpret natural environment that way? If we don't, then that is the issue. If we do, what is the reason? You see, how do we define or how do we determine what the value of nature is? Obi adwene no, ponche the value is how that fufu. And you know, for someone, the good value is that it is landed on some afternoon fufu with light soup after you have done well in an eye, not when you have gone to see pressure. But when you go and do well like that, you come, the fufu's value now say it is on the, excuse me, the goat's value is when it is settling on fufu and the soup is around it like an island. The woman is hungry. Yes. So they don't see any other value outside of that. And that is instrumental. And that is anthropocentric. But perhaps, could there be any other value? Eat the fruits and use the leaves for herbs. Bible. So the tree's value is what it is to me as a human being, or to us as human beings. That is how someone may interpret it. So if the tree is an obstruction, we are cutting it down. We haven't done anything. So far as that one will ultimately benefit the human being. We need the trees only so far as they benefit us. That's instrumental. Is there any dignity? Is there any intrinsic worth to nature that makes it worthy of what? Moral consideration? That is, according to Calicut, the focus of what? Environmental ethics, or the concern of environmental ethics. And let you read these pointers here.
Some theorists have every place with some interest of a kind can have intrinsic value. Some others will say nature has intrinsic value because nature has telos, purpose. Others will say just because they have intrinsic value. Many have pointed out that it's possible to reject anthropocentrism without posting the existence of intrinsic value in the natural world. That is to say, one can reject the view that something has value insofar as it serves human interest, but still think that its value depends on its serving interest of some kind. Thus, a view that says that the value of a plant depends on whether it serves the interest of some divine entity, or the interest of the ecosystem, or the interest of all sentient beings, will count as non-anthropocentric, but not in virtue of attributing intrinsic value to the plant.
Thank you. I hope that people are taking note of the various ways of responding to or thinking about the question we put earlier, this one. The question is how to discover intrinsic value in nature is a defining problem for environmental ethics. Why is that? Because some theorists, like your friend read, have argued that only things with some interest of a kind can have intrinsic value. So that for this one, depending on the interests we have in the thing, then we can determine its intrinsic value. Others will say nature has intrinsic value because nature has telos, purpose. Now you can relate that to someone, at least from our discussions. You remember William Paley, the teleological argument. Purpose. There is organization. There is a plan. Nature is not abrupt. It's not scattered all over the place. It's organized. So there has to be a brain behind such organization, for which reason the things we see in nature couldn't have just been there. They are not just there for you and I. Okay. They must have a purpose behind their creation. Okay. They must have their own worth outside of us. So those who argue from that would say, others would say, just because they have life, they have intrinsic value. If the thing has life from quality, and that is where the question is, something the sun has life. You think that life is just how someone interprets empirical verses. Some even think the sea has life. Bosompo. Okay, look at the traditional folks. What they call it bosompo. Asasiya. our mother. Okay? But the earth is not talking. Did the earth talk to you? But something it does. The rock has life. That's why. So for some to pacify whatever, they'll throw an egg at the tree and do life for life, etc., etc. So you will say that okay, if it has life, then it has intrinsic value. Yeah, then the tree, maybe the tree is not included, or the rock. Forget the tree because of how we define living things. We will include the tree. How about the rock or the mountain? You say that one doesn't have life. Not life. For others, it has life, and if it has such life, that alone gives it what? Intrinsic value, which means it has its own moral stance, and therefore we cannot think of it only in anthropocentric terms for instrumental value. The third point that your lady read says many have pointed out that it is possible to reject anthropocentrism, yes, without necessarily positing the existence of intrinsic value in the natural world. Even if we thought that the rock, rivers, what have you, don't have intrinsic value, cry. Suppose we are not able to find what accounts for the intrinsic value that it should have. So in other words, we can't establish whether it has intrinsic value. We still can reject anthropocentrism. Finished. In other words, if it doesn't have intrinsic value, nature doesn't have intrinsic value, and it's even instrumental value, it still doesn't mean all the instrumentality should benefit the human person. The human person cannot necessarily be the center of the whole creation. Who is the object of what benefit? So I can reject anthropocentrism and may not be able to necessarily give an alternative and say that trees and animals and what have you have intrinsic value. Even if I do that by force, everything must boil down to how the human person benefits. So that's the third point. Intrinsic value for not the natural world. Okay, the point 4 then says what? That is to say, it's building on earlier. One can reject the view that something has value insofar as it serves human interest. You can reject that view, but still think that its value depends on its serving interests of some kind. So you can reject anthropocentrism and still embrace, okay, an instrumental value of nature. So it benefits us, but it doesn't have to necessarily always focus on what benefits the human person. That is anthropocentrism. And yet you accept that nature plays an instrumental. When we start looking at specific, if you like, religious views or cultural views and what the traditional thinking, even the cosmological arguments that are made, and then the current I referenced it before we started, climate change and what have you, discuss. You will see what we are saying. Sometimes in the bid to correct the environmental errors, we rather create more problems. But we'll see. Okay, so we are not necessarily obliged to posit the existence of intrinsic value for natural world just because we do not accept anthropocentrism. Then the last point, a view that says that the value of a plant depends on whether it serves the interests of some divine entity or the interests of the ecosystem or the interests of all sentient beings will count as non-anthropocentric, okay, because of the various interests it serves, not necessarily only human interests. It could be serving a divine, the interest of a divine entity, God, the deities, what have you, that tree, or it could be serving the interest of the ecosystem when that tree's leaves falls into the soil, then it ferments, then it generates compost that now helps the plant to grow to generate fruit. Then the fruit serve the human persons. That's where the human being comes in. Then the human being also grows and is able to now spread the seeds somewhere. Then the seeds benefit the animal. Then the animal also spreads it. Then it benefits the river because the leaves, distills the water. Then that one also comes and the human being comes to drink and the trees pick from the water. So it's an ecosystem, not only to benefit the human person. So that is just to show an instance where we are not necessarily to be committed to anthropocentrism, and yet we don't have to also say that the natural world has intrinsic value. The value is still instrumental. It's because of what it does, how it benefits other members of the environment, but not necessarily how it benefits only humans. Anthropocentrism. Okay, that will count as non-anthropocentric, yes, but not in virtue of attributing intrinsic value to the plant. I think the point is well made. Any questions before I move? Let me check and see. Is there any question? Very good. I hope you are picking something and you'll be able to answer my questions when I finish and I open them on Sakai, like I told you I would. Okay, I'm going to do that. So individualism versus holism. The word holism, I think you can think of it as communitarianism or collectivism of a kind, just so that you can connect ideas from what you know from all the other discussions we've had. Individualism, communitarianism, level 200, the discussion on atomism, level 300. You've seen this over and over again, so you can build and connect ideas. What kinds of entities are morally significant in their own right? Let's look at that discussion. Okay. My lady, read one more and then we will take someone else. Please, if you want to read, keep the hand up. Quick. Sita, go ahead.
Okay, individualism argues that individual persons, animals, plants, etc. are valuable in their own right, while the value of the larger wholes that these individuals comprise, species, ecosystems, the biosphere, etc., is merely derivative of the value of the individual constituent. This view came to be called individualism. Theories generally considered to be forms of individualism are biocentrism and animal rights. The view that some or all animals have.
Very good. So you will see that what you know of individualism is what we are projecting. The thought that human persons, you and I, one, animals, plants, are valuable in their own right, while the value of the larger wholes that these individuals comprise, so the species, human beings, animals of all versions. So you can talk of monkeys, for example, okay, species, the cat family, the home cat, the leopard, the tiger, the water, they are all within a species. Now, what have they done? Ecosystems, the biosphere, etc. All these are what? Merely derivative. You get them from. So what's the argument? These individuals, you, myself, the sister reading, the brother reading, each one of us are valuable in our own right, while the collective us, that is the collective that we are made of, we come from. So human beings, monkey group, cat group, tree group, river group. I'm trying to use that. So species, ecosystems, biosphere, etc. is merely derivative of the value of the individual constituents. So the reason why we will give value to human beings, the species, Homo sapien, is because of the value we place on the individual Homo sapien. The dignified him. I told you, if a car knocks down someone, even if the person was an armed robber, and the car ran over the dead body, go and come, we don't know him. But we'll treat him like we would have treated the individual you or the individual me, because we see him as what? A member of the Homo sapien, the collective species. So the kind of regard we give to the individual person, individual plant, individual animal, who has a right for her own sake, for his own sake, we transfer that to the species. So what we get or what we give to the species is merely derivative. It derives from, that's the point I'm making. I want you to understand that it's derivative of the value of the individual constituent. What you give to the individual constituent is what you transfer to the collective that he or she belongs to. This view has been called individualism. Okay. Now such theories in environmental ethics that are labeled individualist theories include biocentrism and animal rights theories. Okay. The view that all or some animals have moral rights. So the right that you are giving to the animal transfers to that species. Then holism would say what, my lady?
Holism argues that we should consider wholes to be the primary bearers of value and the value of individuals to depend on the contribution that those individuals make to the good of the wholes. The most common type of holism in environmental ethics is ecocentrism and land ethics.
I hope that this is straightforward. For holism, the concern is not about the individual. The concern is about the collective and the contribution the specific individual component member is making to the whole. It's no surprise that you hear ecocentrism, center on the ecosystem. So the whole, land ethic, focus on the whole, not a particular individual, holism. So it argues that we should consider wholes to be the primary bearers of value, the whole ecology, not the individuals. It is the respect that are given to the whole that will transcend and 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 what's the expression and trickle down to the individual components there. So ecocentrism and land ethic are examples of it. Whereas when we looked at the individualism version of environmental ethics, we saw biocentrism and animal rights. Okay, now some non-anthropocentric theories, now that we know them. Okay. These are all not centered on the human person. They are not focusing on the human person as the only. So the human person may be included as one of the beneficiaries of nature, but human persons are not the only beneficiaries and should not think that they hold any superior right over the rest of nature. So biocentrism, which we've seen here, see, we saw it as one of the individualist environmental ethics theories. Now we are going to see that this biocentrism is not anthropocentric. Don't let the plenty terminologies bother you. You see that we are taking our time, and I hope that it works well. What's biocentrism now? I think I read. I'll get one more person to do. Oh, I don't see any other hand up. So call your friends who will do a live session assessment. I told you already on what we are doing. Open it, you do it, you close, we are done. So tell them. I don't want people to lose marks. If you have a friend, tell them to join. When I open, I'll just project on the screen and give 10, 15 minutes. Go and respond. That's all. I give a mark. Sister, please go on now.
Okay, Doc.
Biocentrism. 1. The view that each living thing matters morally in its own right. 2. Humans are a part of environment and not apart from environment.
Well read.
3.
Well done.
In 3. Biocentrism, the entire nature is respected and inherent worth of each and every species, including human, regardless of its uses and hierarchy, is valued. 4. Biocentrism does not believe in any order or hierarchy of organism, and humans are considered as a par with other species.
As a par, they are equal. So the river, the way you don't want someone to enter your room or someone to just see you and then throw dirty, a bowl that has been washed and the oil and everything, someone has eaten his gobe. and I seem to be hungry this evening. And the oil and all the nasty things, she washes her hand into it, and she's going to throw it out. Then you were passing, throws it on your face like that, the way you will not like it. That is how you should realize that the river will not like it when you go and dump rubbish into it. Yes. So it doesn't believe in any order or hierarchy. Like some people are senior members of the ecosystem. No, human beings are the boss. They can enter into the jungle and look for somebody's children. I saw some, excuse me, someone's GP then, and the sad, the fisherman is in a boat with his 3 kids, I think, and they are telling each other that daddy is going to get us food. Okay, now inside the water where the fisherman's hook is looking for a fish is a father fish with 3 fishes behind, baby fishes behind them. They are also saying, and you know, the father fish is going to pick the fish at the end of the hook down there. So the baby fishes are telling themselves under the water, daddy is going to get us food. Just like the father human being in the boat up there has his 3 children in the car saying, daddy is going to get us food. Everybody believes they are going to get food for their children. But as you are doing that, you are food. So the father fish is food for the human being out there, okay? But remember that there could also be a lion on the tree, hidden there with his baby lion, who is also praying to get human being father as food. What is the point? Whilst you are busily, this is how the biocentrism view of the environment thinks, or wants you to think about the environment. Understand that you are a member of a whole. So we value you and value the other person and value the other person as individual members. You have to respect each one of us. Remember, it is one of the individualist, if you like, doctrines of environmental ethics. Okay. Each on your screen now, point 3. Each one of us is valid. There is no hierarchy. The each here includes human beings, includes what? Animals, if you like, includes the trees, rivers. So the same respect that each one of us requires is the one that we must met out to the other. There's no order, no hierarchy of organisms. And you human beings, who are often the bone of contention, we are the troublemakers all the time. Okay, we are a par with other species. That is the point for the biocentric view. So biocentrism on your screen denies the so-called moral and ethical superiority of humans. You see why it's not anthropocentric? And biocentrism further states that each organism, small or big, even the mosquito, has rights. That one there. That one there. Question mark. Mosquito and rats. Look at what rats are doing to us now. The Lassa fever. So if rats come into my area, I have to give it the same respect that I give to a human being. Nah lie. Anyway, that's what the biocentric views are. See, perhaps there are more. If we were to go into the details of it, we'll be able to see the queries. But biocentrism point 2 further states that each organism, small or big, has a purpose and a reason for its existence, including the mosquito. Last week, I asked you, Emmanuel Diafo says, look, why do you have issue with the mosquito? Today, to our asking, cockroaches too have purpose. We have heard. Every organism plays some or other role which is good, valuable, essential, and inevitable, including the warp. Remember what Darwin and his folks said when they were critiquing? He says he can't come to terms with, he can't persuade himself to accept the fact that a benevolent God created a warp whose whole duty is to munch on another insect's blood. But that is why you are not all knowing. You and I are not all knowing. So the one who knows all things knows why mosquitoes are important. I'm yet to find out though, which is fine. That's why I'm human. Okay. So a key proponent is Paul Taylor. A key proponent of what? Biocentrism, which says every animal, individual animal, or species of animal, every individual group of nature, and the specific individuals within have intrinsic worth. Excuse me. They are valuable, they are essential, they are inevitable, and they have purpose, and there's a reason for their existence. Paul Taylor. Biocentrism, which is one of the individualist-centric, individualist environmental ethics view, which is what? Anti-anthropocentric. In other words, non-anthropocentric. Therefore, which will not give an instrumental view necessarily. It may, but it may not, to what? Nature. What about the other one? See, we see Leopold. He is a proponent of land ethics. Land ethics we saw earlier. Look up here, please, on the screen. We saw it to be one of what? The holism view. Those who have a holistic orientation to what? Nature. They don't think of nature as individualist. They think you should look at the whole, not the individual, to determine what moral status or value. What does Leopold say? He says the land is a community and people are members. So think of the individualism communitarianism debate now. Transfer the respect you have for the individual to the community. So the respect and the value is to the individual. The individual is the focus. That's the individualistic view we have looked at, one of them being the biocentric, okay? But when you come to the communitarian view, we say respect the collective and it will trickle down to the individual. So if you got that, then you can see the land ethics view, which is a holistic one, a holistic view. It says, think of the land as a community and people are members. What does Leopold say? Nana, Kofi, I'm read for me. Thank you, my lady. Afterwards, Enoch can read too. So Nana, read first, then Enoch can read. Nana, I'm muted. Okay, Enoch, if you are there, you can read for me, please. And Nana is reading now. I think he's unmuted now. So Nana, go ahead. How? Can someone read? Anybody else able to read for us, please? Bettina, go ahead. Thank you. I think Nana is having issues. Go ahead, Bettina.
Leopold taught the ethics to cooperate with others for the mutual benefit. She argued that this community should be enlarged in non-human elements such as soil, water, plants, and animals, or collective the land.
The land. Very good. So we should look at the collective. If they include soils and the others, then now we don't know what to do. Where will we put our bola? Eh? When we burn it, the air is talking. We can't keep it in our room too. When we bring it outside and dig the soil to put it, the soil too is angry. Where should we go with our bola? See, that is the thing that stresses other people when they say forget about the other ones and think about the human being. After all, God said, I've given you the fruits of the trees for food, and I've given you the leaves for medicine. So it is for our benefits that God created. So for us, we are not wasting it, and we are enjoying the fruit. We haven't done anything bad, but some people will go and pluck because the thing is naturally given. They will go and pluck, wash all the mangoes and sit down, can't eat even one or two, acquire 10, and they throw about 40 away. That is waste. That one day the mango is not happy with you. So this gentleman argues, Leopold says that think of ethics as the way to cooperate with each other for the mutual benefit of all. So the tree should breathe out carbon dioxide, like I told you last week when we were discussing the teleological argument, for the benefit of human beings, just so that human beings can also breathe in that oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide for the benefit of the tree. The tree should give me food to eat, and then when I finish eating, forgive me, the waste that comes can add to some other things to create compost and manure that will enrich the tree in its preparation of food. So the tree will take that nitrogen, phosphorus, whatever that comes from that waste from me, see, and then use it as food, produce more fruits for me to come and eat. So it is for mutual benefit, and that's why the community, the collective, must be the focus, because that way everyone will benefit. I have a few left. I want to see if we can finish. A thing is right if it tends to preserve the beauty, stability, or integrity of a piece of land. It is wrong if it tends otherwise. We have heard. The land ethics changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to plain member and citizen of it. See why it is also anthropocentric? Even though one is individualistic in orientation, the other is holistic. They are both non-anthropocentric, I should say. The biocentrism that we saw and what we are looking at now, land ethics, are two versions. One is coming from an individualist approach, if you like. The other one is coming from a holistic approach, and yet they both are what? Non-anthropocentric. They don't focus on just the human person as a champion alone. You see? All right. It implies respect for his or her fellow members and also respect for the community as such. Now we go to ecocentrism. My lady, please read for me.
Okay. Ecocentrism. This approach to understanding ecology is also nature-centered. It is the view that ecosystem matters in their own right, and individuals have by virtue of the contribution they make to ecosystemic functioning. Ecocentrism believes that there is hardly any difference or division between human and non-human. It believes equality among human and non-human organisms with their internal association.
With their internal association. That's, I think, the little tweak to the discussion. Ecocentrism. So the ecosystem in question. If we are dealing with the water, when we are in the water, like for instance, the fish, all the versions of fish within the water must what? Function to make the ecosystem work. Remember, there are fishes, there are also seaweeds, the plants that grow in the sea there, etc., etc. Within that ecosystem, nobody is a champion because we need each other within our internal association to survive. When we go into the air, maybe we can think of that. In the forest, we can think of that, and so on. So it is saying the same, except that this is centering on what? An ecosystem. This approach to understand ecology is also nature-centered. But how is it done? Let's look out for how our ecosystem matters. So each ecosystem matters in their own right. You don't go and alter them. You see now the bush diseases are coming home because we enter into the bushes and build our houses there. We are not giving them the insects and the crawling animals and what have you, their space. You are in your compound in an estate, supposed estate. Then you see mampam. You know mampam? Hey, do you have at mampam on your wall? That place is mampam's territory. We have invaded all with our modernity and our estate and skyscrapers. Then we go and put our asphalt on it and we say we have come. You are in a city in Accra, then grass is growing through the pavement, telling you that this place, this soil, this ecosystem has been interfered with. Some places are waterways. I'm not talking about water, river or stream or whatever. Then we just go and put our asphalt on it and turn it. So when it rains, then the ecosystem speaks. This one, ecocentrism, is the view that ecosystems matter in their own right, and individuals have value by virtue of the contribution they make to that ecosystem. You can't go and obstruct them and then look at it. So the individual's focus. Look at ecocentrism. Where do we find it? Look here, please. Look on my screen. When we did the two types, you see ecocentrism and land ethic, they are under what? Holism, meaning that look at the collective. Respect the collective, the whole. It will trickle down to the individuals there. Okay. So ecocentrism and land ethic belong to the holism view. And that is what we have seen here, expanded. If you learn it that way, the words are plenty, but I think you will do fine. Their internal association must not be interfered with. Easy. Okay. The ecosphere as a whole is more significant, inclusive, and integrated. Ecocentrism is also a wider concept and goes beyond biocentrism. It believes that humans are part of the entire organic and inorganic, example, biotic and abiotic nature. I want us to end with this one. And I'll take questions and then open a very quick assessment that you will do to earn yourself a mark on Sakai. Any questions, please? Thank you, Nana Kofi. Your hand is still up. Thank you so much. Is there any question? Where are the other people? Still 35 people. There are more than that. If I open an assessment, they won't do well. Emmanuel, I told your people. Or they are standing somewhere waiting. And they hear, then they go to Sakai. Yeah, dear. How can you people be helped? Okay. Any questions? Okay, Nana, please ask your question now. Your hand is up. Nana Kofi, for some reason we can't hear you. I can't hear you. If Yanum don't want you to send your picture, so they have blocked your thing. If Nana cannot, Nana, I can always send your question later. So I'm going to project the question on the screen. Please, you will go to Sakai quickly and respond in 10 minutes. And then you are done. It's an in-class assessment. I want to know if people came to class. So I'll put the in-class assessment to end with 10%. I'll work out all of that